You're listening to the Marriage Clinic podcast, a podcast on love, marriage, and personal development. Our purpose is to inspire and equip you with knowledge and skills to enable you have lasting and fulfilling relationships. Now your host, Joshua Mulgrew.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Marriage Clinic podcast. This is a podcast about love. It's a podcast about relationships, marriage, and your personal development. And as usual, it is me, Joshua Mulgrew, here, discussing issues that you really love to hear. We don't take it lightly. Our views are going up. More people are subscribing. And it is a pleasure to be with you this evening. It's about 8 p.m. GMT in Ghana. I don't know where you're watching from or if you'll be watching it at a later date. But we are excited that you are here with us, and let's jump into this. I'll give you a minute to share it. Share it wherever. Send the link to some friends. Let them listen to it. We are on our divorce series, a very funny series that we have. And I found a lot of people have been intrigued by the topic. It's called I Do, I Did, I'm Done. I do, I did, I'm done. I do, I did, I'm done. We are looking at the whole journey to divorce and how to stop that journey or how to make sure it doesn't end up in divorce if possible. But if it does happen to go into divorce, what you should do, what you should know. So let's jump in. Last week, for the last 2 weeks, I've been talking about 10 things you should consider before you decide to have a divorce. 10 things you should consider before you decide to have a divorce. So now, let's say you are there's someone who's seriously considering a divorce. At this point, we are shifting gears a little bit. Here's the thing. It could be 5 years ago. It could be 10 years ago. It could be 15. It could be 12. It could be 2. You stood at the altar, most likely in church, before a pastor or a priest, and you said, I, so-and-so, take you, so-and-so, to be my wife or husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part. According to God's holy law, in the presence of God, I make this vow. That's the vow that was made. So after making this vow, you are now at the point where you've decided that, well, even though I swore before God and before everybody present and the families, I did, I don't. I'm done. All right? Now, so if considering a divorce, what is a divorce? A divorce is the legal dissolution of a marriage by a court or a competent body. So if it was a traditional marriage that was done before the elders have ways to dissolve the marriage. If it was done before a court, you need to go back to the courts to get the marriage dissolved. You don't pack out of the house and say we are divorced. You are not divorced. You are separated. Living and not living with your spouse does not mean you are divorced. You may not have lived together for 20 years. It does not mean it is a divorce until you have gone to the courts or the legal institution present to dissolve the marriage. So for those out there who have abandoned their wives or had to run away from their husbands and saying you are divorced, you are not divorced, you are separated. You are not divorced, you are separated. Using a personal example, in my parents' case, they were separated for over 25 years. But when my dad passed away, legally, my mom was still his wife. So, you need to get an institution. The institution you went to and had it legally done is the same institution you must go for the marriage to be separated. A pastor cannot just say, from today, I declare the two of you divorced and you are divorced. No, it doesn't work like that. Now, there's always been this debate. Can a Christian divorce his wife? can a Christian divorce her husband? We know that when we take faith out of it, when we are not looking at it in the sense of I'm a Christian or so on, divorce is very simple. I don't want to be married to you any longer. I want a divorce. However, because the Bible frowns on divorce in Malachi, I think it's Malachi chapter 2 verse 16. It says, I am the Lord and I hate divorce. And Jesus spoke about divorce and so on. So as Christians, you cannot divorce for the reasons that worldly people divorce. Now, if you're not a person of faith and I say worldly people, it's Christian jargon that simply means people who do not subscribe to the Christian faith. All right. So people who do not subscribe to the Christian faith can go ahead and get a divorce for various reasons. But for us as believers, there are certain things we need to take account for. So a question that kept coming and I'm trying to answer now is, when can a Christian get a divorce? If you're a Christian, when can you get a divorce? The first one, number one, the first instance with which you can get a divorce is in cases of adultery. In cases of adultery. And what is adultery? That is when the person you are married to sleeps with, has sex with someone outside the marriage. So they could be having sex with another married person or a single person, or the world is getting strange, or a person of the same sex. Once there is sexual activity with another person, it's considered as adultery. Scripture, to give you a scripture, Matthew chapter 19, 7-9, Jesus talks about it, where he says that you are permitted to divorce if the person has cheated on you. So here's the thing. It doesn't say you have to divorce. It says you are permitted to divorce if there has been cheating. Okay? You are permitted to divorce if there has been cheating. So the first one is in cases of adultery. So whenever there's a case of adultery, even in the law courts, I'll come to what the law courts take, but in Christendom, you have the right to divorce. All right? Then the second reason is when you have been abandoned by a spouse due to your Christian beliefs. So abandonment is another one. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 15 to 17, it says, yet if the unbelieving one leaves, let him leave. The brother or the sister is not under bondage in such cases. So where they have left, now we're looking at it strictly within the purview, where they have left, where you have been abandoned. Yes, those are grounds for divorce. Now, those are the two things that are mentioned in scripture. And for this reason, so many people have stayed in marriages where they have died. So many people have stayed in marriages where they have been abused, all because they look at these two reasons. But sometimes there's what we call the application. All right, the application. What you must understand is that the covenant of life supersedes the covenant of marriage. What does that mean? The covenant of life is up here. The covenant of marriage is down here. So the covenant of life is your right to live. Your right to be a human being. All right? Your right to live. And now, anything that threatens your life is grounds for you to leave the marriage. There are so many people that have come back home in coffins simply because they were unwilling to look bad in the Christian light and stayed in an abusive marriage. If you are in an abusive marriage, don't say because I'm a Christian, I will stay and he will kill me, or I will stay and she will kill me. Are we together? If you are in an abusive marriage. Now, when we talk about abuse, people even stretch it beyond physical abuse to emotional and psychological abuse, where you are being gaslighted, where you are being cut off from all your friends, you are being told you shouldn't go to specific places, and it persists. In cases of abuse, where your life is being threatened, where you are now becoming suicidal because of how you are being treated, you are permitted to go ahead and get a divorce. All right? Because the life covenant comes above the marriage covenant. Now, we must also realize that divorce is not the unpardonable sin. I know in today's generation, people divorce at the drop of a hat. And one of the reasons why we run the marriage clinic is that we are determined to teach people how to get their marriages to work. So I believe in marriage. I believe that marriages can work. I do not think any marriage is beyond redemption. I think if both parties are willing to work at it and take steps, there are ways to come back from that. However, let's even say you divorced for not one of these reasons. Let's say you divorced for any other reason that biblically is looked at as wrong. Divorce is not an unpardonable sin. In the same way, God will forgive the person who takes a life, the killer who comes before God and says, Lord, I killed somebody, please forgive me, and receives redemption. In the same way, the prostitute who has turned her life around, the thief, the liar, the gossip, in the same way, if even, and this is liberating someone, if even your divorce may not have been under the scriptural grounds, it doesn't mean that your life is over, and it doesn't mean that it's an unpardonable sin. All right? So other things that lead to divorce, or other things that spike divorce, or may make you want to find out if I need to leave this marriage. I've spoke about abandonment. There are people, especially where we live in Africa, where traveling to the West is seen as a golden ticket. Recently, we were talking with somebody and the person said, I have an American passport. And he was saying it and looking at everybody to go like, wow, you have an American passport. You have the Holy Grail. Oh my goodness. Yes, it's just another country. But anyway, people leave their wives in Ghana. It could be Ghana. It could be Kenya. It could be Nigeria. Liberia. We have a lot of people watching from Liberia, Sierra Leone. It could be any of these countries. You leave your wife and then you are gone for 15 years. She hardly hears from you, hardly sees you. You've abandoned the person. All right? Where there's drug abuse, he goes out, he smokes weed, he comes back, he acts in an erratic way, he endangers your life and the life of your children, and he can't beat the habit, it may be a good idea to walk. Where there's alcoholism, all right, domestic violence, all these things are things that you are going to have to evaluate. But we do not go with, he doesn't make me happy, I want to divorce him. I don't like her sex, I want to divorce her. She's rude to me, I want to divorce her. Those are childish reasons for wanting to get a divorce. All right. When we talk about a divorce, we're talking about life and death issues and issues that pertain to your well-being. Okay. That said, what is the procedure if you want to get a divorce? If you want to get a divorce, what is the procedure like? I'm not advocating, I'm advising. I normally advise when couples come to me and they say, hey, we want to get a divorce. Hey, we are tired of the marriage. And they've done a couple of things. The first thing you need to do, especially if you're going to go to court, is that you need to get counselors involved. A lot of people just run straight to the court, and sometimes the court is going to recommend that you go for 6 months of counseling before they are willing to grant you a divorce, because it shouldn't be a knee-jerk thing. All right? So the first thing you should look at is getting counseling. If you are considering divorce, you need to have a very clear conversation with your spouse and say, look, I'm at that point where I am nearly at the point of wanting to file papers for divorce. And the person may say, go ahead, file the papers. I don't care. Go ahead, file the papers. No. Have a calm conversation and say, let's go for marital counseling and let's try and sort this out. So first, you go for counseling. If that does not work, the next thing I advise and we advocate for is separation. One person packs out of the house, most likely and preferably the man. You move out. If there are children involved, because you don't want to destabilize the kids. If no children involved, one of you decides to move out, and you spend a number of weeks away from each other so that you can think through the issues. Because sometimes you don't appreciate someone till the person is gone. And sometimes when you realize how life is going to be during the divorce through separation, you are able to take better decisions. Then brings me to the next one. As I said last week, and I'm saying it again, divorce takes time. On average in our country, Ghana, it takes about 3 years to get a divorce. I was talking to someone yesterday who has been in divorce court for the best part. I think it's getting to 2 years now. It's about 18 months. And yesterday they went to court and her lawyer didn't show up. So it has been adjourned for another month. And she's not called her witnesses yet. So you need to understand that it takes such a long time to get a divorce. So don't just imagine that I said I want a divorce. We are going to court tomorrow. We're going to get a divorce. If you truly want a divorce, know that this process is going to take you about 3 years. All right? It's going to take you about 3 years. Now, I always like to put this in. It takes more effort and pain to get a divorce than to fix a marriage. The effort, the pain, the time, the embarrassment to a certain degree, the explanations. When you quantify and cost all of that, and you quantify and cost the two of you sitting down and saying, you know what, till death do us part, let's work at this thing. What do you need for me to change? What can I change? What will I not be able to change? How can we find a working marriage? That is cheaper emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, relationally. It is cheaper than getting a divorce. Okay? Now, most of us African countries have similar laws because we were colonized by the same people. Don't get me talking about colonization. Anyway, in Ghana, I just want to tell you about the grounds for divorce in Ghana. This, in fact, is the sole grounds for divorce. That notwithstanding, the sole grounds may be evidenced by proof or one of the following. When we are talking about divorce, reasons you can go and get divorced. Number one, in the courts. Now, we are not talking about biblically. We are looking at in the courts. And when the lawyer comes on, he will go deeper. Number one is adultery. You can go to court for adultery. But we'll ask the lawyer when he comes in. I'm hearing that if adultery took place and then you went ahead and you started sleeping with your spouse again, you cannot use adultery as an excuse. He'll explain that when he comes in. So number one is adultery. Number two is unreasonable behavior. Now that's where a good lawyer is able to make anything and everything show unreasonable behavior. Anything that is deemed as unreasonable behavior, abuse, substance addiction, financial terrorism, and all of that. When you can prove that as unreasonable behavior, then desertion. When you have been deserted by your spouse, that's grounds for divorce in this country. Separation without consent for a period of 2 years. So if the person is going abroad and you say, I don't want you to go, or the person is moving to Tamale and you are in Takrade and you say, I don't want you to go, and the person is away for a minimum of 2 years, it's grounds for divorce. That's without consent. Now, when you have been separate for 5 years, it's grounds for divorce. So maybe she left home, she's been away for up to 5 years, it's ground for divorce. Now, also, you need to remember that sometimes staying is worse than leaving. I know as I'm saying all this and I'm thinking about it, I don't also want someone to be sitting in a marriage that is killing them, or you are now thinking of killing yourself because you want out of the marriage. So sometimes staying is worse than leaving. And sometimes we say we are staying because of the children. And take this from someone who came from a broken home. Sometimes the children growing up in an abusive household is worse than them knowing their parents are separated. You can be damaging children for life by choosing to stay in an abusive marriage just because you don't want the tag of divorce. I don't know who that is liberating today, but here we are. This is the Marriage Clinic. It's a podcast that comes once a week to you. Today we are dealing with the not so pleasant subject of divorce, and we've gone through some of the reasons why you can get a divorce and what to do. This is the Marriage Clinic podcast. I trust that I've given you a bit of an understanding of reasons you can get divorced and how to go about it to a certain extent. I sincerely pray. I'm praying for two groups of people. First of all, I'm praying for those that have problems in their marriage that can be solved, but still want a divorce. I pray that God touches your heart. God grants you wisdom on how to fix these situations. And then I'm also praying for those who need to leave, that God grants you strength to leave, because there are some marriages that may take your life. It's a sad note, but it's a good note because at least we know what is happening. So up until next week, we will meet again. My name is Dr. Joshua Mogri. Please do subscribe. And I have a big request. Even if you are listening to this on the podcast on Anchor, or you're watching this on Facebook, could you please go to my YouTube account and subscribe? I need a certain number of subscribers before the end of this month, so I need some help from you. Please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. It's been a pleasure being with you for the last 20 odd minutes. Next week, I'm coming to you with how do you protect yourself and your marriage against divorce? How do you protect yourself and your marriage against divorce? It's great. See you next week. Take good care of yourself. Love you all. Bye. Last week, we looked at divorce, when it's okay to get a divorce, some of the grounds for divorce, and we got some feedback. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And now we want to look at how do you protect yourself and your marriage against divorce? How do you protect yourself and your marriage against divorce? You may have been hearing all of this and saying to yourself, I don't want to get divorced. I don't want a divorce. I pray I never have to get divorced. Well, I'm about to tell you some things that you can do that will ensure that your marriage is majorly protected from divorce. That will ensure your marriage is majorly protected from divorce. So please share this link. If you're watching right now, please like it and please share it wherever you're watching it. And if you are listening to it on the audio version, please do your best to send it to somebody who would also enjoy it. And leave us a rating. 5-star will not be bad. So keep sharing, keep telling people about this podcast. Let's get more people on board. Our viewership and our listenership is going up. And I think we've done well over 30. I think we've done about between 25 to 30. I need to get the exact number podcast, and they are out there. So please get them and help yourself keep improving. So let's say you've been listening to probably when I spoke about the things to consider before getting a divorce, you listened to that, then you've seen all the stress that goes into getting a divorce, and you are asking yourself, what can I do to make sure I do not get a divorce? I'm about to tell you a couple of things that you can do to avoid a divorce. A couple of things you can do to avoid a divorce. Now, this one will sound really funny. It will sound funny, but please listen to it. The first thing that you can do to prevent yourself from getting a divorce or reduce your risk of a divorce is to avoid having premarital sex. Now, I'm quiet. Several studies have been done, not biblical studies. Several studies on marriage have been done where data has been taken. And as you know, I really like data. There is a significant influence on premarital sex on chances of divorce. Plus, the more sexual partners you have had before marriage is directly related to your increased chances of having a divorce. So what does that mean? Technically, your divorce can be predicted by how active you were sexually before marriage. But why is that so? When I was reading the articles, I didn't go so much, it didn't go to explain in detail. But off the top of my head, you can understand that because sex involves much more than just a physical attraction, it definitely will have an influence after marriage. In fact, couples that do not sleep together before they get married have a higher chance of avoiding divorce. So that's the first one. The second one is, so basically what we are saying here is this. If you don't want to get divorced, please be careful about how you behave before you get married. All right? Then the second thing to do to avoid divorce is do not ignore premarital signals. Do not ignore premarital signals. Do not ignore premarital signals. What does it mean? From where I sit as a marriage counselor, a lot of the things that people come to me and talk about as problems, they saw when they were dating. So yes, while we were dating, she loses her temper, but it was cute. It was cute when you were dating, but now you've realized that it's not as cute. Okay? He used to spend on you a lot. You call him in the middle of the day and you say, I just heard this and I need this amount of money, and he sends you money. And then before you can smile, he sends you money. Now you are married. When anyone calls him about money, he takes your rent. He sends you the rent. Where did you think he was getting the money before you got married? So you see, a lot of the things that are issues you will see in your premarital life. So think about it. If you are currently dating, the question you need to ask yourself is, what am I seeing now that has potential to push me off the edge and make me want a divorce one day? Ask yourself that question. All right. Then now, if you're not a person of faith, this particular one may not make too much sense to you. But the next one is deal with the strong man. Okay? Deal with the strong man. As believers, we believe that the issues of divorce are both physical and spiritual. So for instance, if there has been a pattern of divorce in your family, it may be important to pray seriously against divorce while you are married. You need to come to an understanding for us as believers. If you're not a believer, the next point will be good for you. But for us as believers, we understand that divorce is also a spirit, and it can perpetrate in families under different conditions. So you need to pray about it. You need to pray about the mindset and all those things. So prayer is important to engage. Now, the next one is number 4, is your marriage needs regular servicing, okay? Or a regular tune-up. What does it mean? This may be weekly. This may be monthly. You and your spouse need to sit down and talk about the marriage. You need to ask one another, how are you feeling about the marriage lately over the last week? Questions like, how are you feeling about the marriage lately? And it's best to kind of rank it. So if I sat with my wife and I asked her, I probably would ask on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is like the marriage is terrible and 10 is like this is the best marriage I have ever had. Where would you rank the marriage this week? Then you talk about things like communication, finances. You need to know where each other are, because you could be having the time of your life and your spouse is like, I can't stand this marriage any longer. That's why some people are blindsided by marriage, especially for men, because the man is going out, he's working, he's enjoying himself. Probably they have young kids and his wife is the one engaging the young kids more. And he is feeling very satisfied because when he looks at his table, he has a son, he has a daughter, his wife is taking care of the home and working as well. His business is doing well and he's traveling all over the place. But his wife may be feeling like, I don't know how much longer I can do this because my husband is not around. I'm having to take care of the kids a lot on my own, and I am stressed. So regular check-ins, regular servicing, regular check-ins with your spouse. How are things going on? And it's not, these shouldn't be sessions for you to defend or to argue. They are sessions for you to understand one another. If you do this on a regular basis, you will see problems when they are coming, and you will find ways of correcting those problems. Okay? Brings us to number 5. Listen to your spouse. A lot of the time, now this one is a bit funny. And it happens more to men than women, but I've also seen women come in with those issues. The person comes in and says, I don't know what's wrong with my wife. She just says she's not happy. And she says she's tired of the marriage. I don't know. I'm doing everything right. I don't know. Then you get in touch with the woman, or she comes in for a session. She says, I've told him what my problems are. Yeah, no, you haven't told me what your problems are. I've told him. What are your problems? I feel lonely. Or she says, I don't know why my husband is acting up. He says, I've told you what my problems are. What are your problems? I feel disrespected. You see, when your spouse tells you that this is my problem, believe them and take it serious. But you can't have in your mind, and especially for men, they feel, if I'm taking care of the home and I'm not cheating on you, that should be a good enough reason for you to be happy in the marriage. But what makes everybody happy in the marriage is different. There are some people who just want, what will make me happy in the marriage? I want you to use my picture as your DP on WhatsApp. But it's such a small thing. And sometimes you brush it off. I'm not going to be manipulated. But if that is what is going to make her happy or him happy, why don't you, for heaven's sake, just change your DP? All right? So the 5th way you protect your marriage from divorce is listening to your spouse. Talking to them and listening to them. Some men only want to talk when it's time for sex. It doesn't work like that. Talk, listen, engage, come home at a respectable hour, sit down between the two of you, have a cup of whatever you want to have, a glass of whatever you want to have, a glass of juice or whatever you want to have some ice cream, sit just the two of you. If the children are young, put the children to bed and just have conversations. How are you really doing? And you see, for men, you may say, every time I ask that question, she talks about problems. But if you ask it often enough, the problems will be reducing. Okay? Let me use the analogy of a car and going for your oil change and servicing. The more regularly you change the oil, check the tire pressures and everything on your car, the less likely your car is or your motorbike is to break down in the middle of the road. But when you hear a noise, you say, oh, don't worry, that noise will go away. Oh, don't worry, that noise will go away. When it stops in the middle of the road, the noise didn't go away. The noise stayed. So listen to your spouse. Now, I'm going to give you a number 6. And number 6 is a big one. There is no small problem in a marriage. It's kind of linked to number 5. How do you protect your marriage from divorce? Recognize that there's no small problem. A lot of the time, people, you see, whenever people seek a divorce, it's not normally, well, when we talk to the lawyer, he'll give us percentages. But from where I sit, when people come in and they feel they are at the point of divorce, it's not normally at the point of he cheated or he beat me. They normally go straight for the divorce. They don't come complaining about those ones. But when someone is being pushed, it is an accumulation of little things that the other person took for granted. She's always borrowing money and buying things on credit. He keeps telling her she's not listening. She's not handling money well. When I give her money for the household, it doesn't stretch till the end of the month. All right? I complain about the time he's coming home and he keeps coming home late. You may say, is coming home grounds for divorce? It's not grounds for divorce, but it can lead someone to want divorce. And when someone wants a divorce, they will find reasons why they will get a divorce. If you look hard enough, you can find a reason to get divorced. And you remember we mentioned unreasonable behavior. Trust me, your drinking water can be deciphered as unreasonable behavior. So if you really want your marriage to work, when your wife, especially for the men, don't say what she's complaining about small things. Small, little drops of water make a mighty ocean. So, and you may want to write, in fact, type that in the chat if you're watching on any of the social media platforms. Type in, there are no small problems in marriage. There are no small problems in marriage. All right? Every problem should be dealt with. Every problem should be engaged on. All right? Great. That brings us to number 7. Connect in the bedroom. Connect in the bedroom. You may find this funny, but the more sex you are having, the less likely you are to have a divorce. One of the quickest indicators of a troubled marriage is lack of sexual activity, especially when they are living in the same house. So if you've gone for a week, you've gone for 2 weeks, and you're not having sex, there is a problem. An ideal couple should be having between 2 to 3 sessions of sex in a week. Ideal married, let me add, married couple. Because I'm just seeing some young men out there, they are like, yes, Pastor Josh, you said it 3 times a week. No, a married couple should be having about sex 2 to 3 times a week. 2 to 3 times a week is good. If you're not having sex, there are problems brewing. In fact, it is more difficult to solve a problem when you are not having sex. So sometimes, and my very good friend Cancer Jim, that's one of his go-to things. I do it, but he does it more than me. You come in for counseling and he sees tempers are flying and he asks, when was the last time you have sex? The guy goes, the lady turns and looks somewhere. He's like, okay, I'm giving you people an opportunity. Go have sex 3 times and come back. And when they come back after 3 times, temperatures are down. Because it's very hard to be angry and be hard at the same time. So one has to come down. Don't worry, you get it. It's very hard to be angry and hard at the same time. Did you get it? If you didn't get it, forget about it. So connect in the bedroom. Regular sex, regularly having intimacy is a defense against divorce. Brings me to number 8. Be vulnerable. Speak your heart. You see, another thing that helps to solve marital issues and prevent it from going towards divorce is when you learn to talk about how you feel. And a lot of men are not comfortable about talking about how they feel. But you need to learn to be able to speak to somebody and your spouse and say, this is how I feel about an issue. I know this is what you were saying, but this is how it was making me feel. Until you can come to the point where you begin to talk about, because how things make you feel, you will continually have problems. Because a lot of the time, it's not what was said, it was how we felt about what was said. You get it? 2 husbands walk home into their homes. And maybe their wives got home before them and they say, hey, I'm hungry. And both wives say, there's no food. I wasn't able to cook. Can we order food? These 2 men may have 2 separate responses based on how they feel. One may feel, hey, she's had a hard day. I love my wife. It's not a big deal. We can have tea and bread or something else. Or we can order in food. The other one may look at it and say, I've gone to work the whole day. I feel disrespected. It's all about feelings. And until we can talk about how we feel, and when talking about feelings, don't say, I am disrespected. No, you say, I feel disrespected. Separate your feelings from who you are, because your feelings are temporal. All right? So number 8, be vulnerable with each other. Speak from the heart. Tell your spouse how you really feel. If you are afraid, tell them you are afraid. If you are upset, tell them you are upset. Don't bottle up your feelings. Number 9, protecting your marriage against divorce. Remember that fixing a marriage is easier than a divorce. Fixing a marriage is easier than a divorce. Remember that. So work at it. And that brings me to the last one, which is number 10. Go for counseling. Go for regular counseling. Go for regular counseling. I advise couples all the time that when you get married, in the first year of marriage, you should go for regular counseling once a month. Once a month, go see your counselors. After the second year, it's advisable that you go once a quarter. All right? You say, well, Josh, we don't have a problem. Why should we go for counseling? That is why you go for counseling. Because you don't have a problem, it's good to go talk about things before they become problems. Let me give you a funny one. In the early stages of our marriage, our baby came quick. We had our daughter, probably some of you are counting. You want to know how many months after marriage? Well, we got married in We got married in July. My wife probably is watching this and saying, what? You can't remember when we got married. So we got married in July and we had Zoe in May. So, yeah. But we were a young couple. The baby had come earlier than we thought she was going to come. And we had to, we are having a problem because she was on maternity leave. I was still working my 9-to-5 job and my side hustle. So anytime the baby wanted to be fed in the night and she turned on the lights, I can't sleep with light. So it started becoming a bit of an issue. She turns on the light, I get upset, I go to the next room, then I can't fall asleep. And we were going back and forth. And sometimes I still believe she used to turn on the light on purpose. Anyway, so it's starting to be a little tiff in the marriage. And we go for one of our regular marriage counseling sessions with our counselors, the Dansos, beautiful couple. And we're talking with them. They are saying, how's everything going? And then I can't remember if she brought it up or I brought it up. I was like, she turns on the light to feed the baby. It's really getting on my nerves. I'm getting tired. I'm considering moving to another room. And she's like, if he really cared and knew the stress I'm under, what's wrong with him just managing the lights in the middle of the night? And we are at each other. I feel she's being disrespectful. She feels I don't love her enough, or else I should endure the light. And our counselor looks at us and says, why don't you get a bedside lamp? And we are both like, what? She said, yes. You need light to feed the baby. You need darkness to sleep. Why don't you put a bedside lamp at her side of the bed? When she turns it on, it doesn't get in your eyes. And then you can keep sleeping. She can see well enough to pick up the baby and feed the baby. And it was like a light went off. Before we got home, we went by, I nearly mentioned the name of that shop. It starts with M. And we went by, we bought a bedside lamp. We put it on her side of the bed, and the quarrel about feeding the baby never came up again because we went to see a counselor. So talking to people about marriage is not because you have monumental problems, but it is an understanding that you are new at this and you need to get things done. Hey, this is the Marriage Clinic, and we have been talking about how to make sure you don't get a divorce. I'm glad you were on this podcast. Please do send in your questions. I trust you've enjoyed this podcast. We've gone a little over our time, but it was good. I got carried away telling a personal story, but I know you enjoyed it. Take good care of yourself. God bless you, and bye-bye.